So in this video, we're going to be taking the LuckFox Pico, which is a small microcontroller that you can use to jailbreak a PS4 up to 11.00, and we're going to put it inside the PS4 for the ultimate stealth look. So without further delay, let's dive in. So the installation was easy enough, but I did have a few issues, and we'll go over those a little bit later on. But essentially, the LuckFox Pico that we used in a previous video to jailbreak the PS4, in this case my PS4 Slim on 11.00, and then of course we done a case for it as well. If you want to check out the cases, click on the link in the description to go to the Etsy shop, or you can click on the link to go to Thingiverse where you can download the STL file and print your own. Now before we dive in and go through how I actually installed it, now this isn't a full-on tutorial, but everything that you need to know is in this video. We've got some diagrams and then I'll show some video footage of me installing it on my PS4. So before we do that, let's just have a look at the PS4 in action, and I'll basically go through connecting it so you can see on video that there's no trickery involved here, and it just basically shows you everything's working as I said it would be when I teased it in an earlier video. So let's have a look at that now. So as I said, this is just a quick look at the PS4 in action. As you can see, there's nothing plugged into it, there's no wires hanging out. For all intents and purposes, this looks like a standard PS4. So let's get the only two cables you need connecting. Now we don't need a USB stick with Gold Hen because it's been jailbroken before. That stick is only used the once. So as you can see, we've got those two cables plugged in, the HDMI and the power. Now, just to show you that it is connected to the TV and there's no trickery involved here, we can see the cables going straight in. One other thing to note is I have got the network settings already set, so PPOE with the username and password of PPP. Now, of course, if you don't know what that means, go and check out the other video, because you should be testing everything before you even attempt to install the Pico inside the console. So make sure you test it and it's all working before you go and install it. Now, of course, we're turning the PlayStation on and I've turned the controller on. If you're wondering what case that is, it's an ExtremeRate case, and I'll put a link in the description. So as we're sitting at the home screen, I've fast forwarded the footage. It's attempting to jailbreak the PS4. And as you can see, great success. The PS4 is now jailbroken, and that took about 2.5–3 minutes. It varies on boot to boot. Sometimes it's really quick, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So as you've just seen, we took the PS4, which wasn't plugged into anything, completely powered off. We plugged in the HDMI and the power cable, turned on the PS4, sat at the dashboard, and then it just seemed to have magically jailbroken itself. So let's take a quick look at the diagrams and how you get this installed. Now, I did say there was an issue before, and the issue was to do with the Ethernet port on that LuckFox Pico itself. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't take that Ethernet port off and then just go straight from the pads, because it's one of those Ethernet ports that I later found out that has the chip and some logic built into the Ethernet port. So if I was to take that port off and then direct wire to the pads on the Pico, it just wouldn't work. So unfortunately, I had to leave that on there. But enough of that, let's have a quick look at the diagrams and then we can look at some video footage of me actually installing it. So as you can see, there's a lot on screen here, but don't worry, I'll go through everything individually, and then in the description there'll be a download where you can download all the images so you've got them for safekeeping. But let's start with powering the Pico. So in the bottom left, you can see the end of the Pico where that USB-C port is, and the two pads that are highlighted there, GRD for ground, and then 5V plus for the voltage. So you want two wires onto each of those ports, and then if you look at the top right, you can see the 5 volts plus and the ground on the actual USB port itself. Now, there is two USB ports on a PS4 Slim, so it doesn't matter which one you use as long as you're using one of the ground points on either side, and then of course that 5 volts plus. So now it's time to wire up the data. Now unfortunately with the Pico, the Ethernet port does have some logic in it, so I wasn't able to take the port off and then install it into the PS4. So what I actually did was, there's 4 pins that you need to sort of bend outwards. So the orange stripe, the green stripe and the green. So what I did was I bent those pins outwards and then soldered wires direct to those and then put some heat shrink over them all the way to the end, just to make sure that none of those contacts would touch. So the next thing I had to do was solder those wires that were going from that Ethernet port to the PS4 motherboard itself. Now as you can see in the top left picture, you can see where all those corresponding points need to go. Now to keep things nice and easy, I actually cut an old Ethernet cable so I could use the correct coloured wires and the striped wires so I didn't get confused. So if you look at the photo at the bottom in the middle, that's what it looked like once I actually soldered everything to that Ethernet port on the PS4. And of course, once I'd done all that, I put some Captain tape over it, just in case any of those connections tried to touch the heat shield in itself. Now, as for the installation itself, it's relatively straightforward. As you can see here, I'm just sort of test fitting everything, because the LuckFox Pico is going to be right at the front of the PS4 in sort of an angled recess. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just doing all the testing, making sure which points need to go to what. Now as I said before, this isn't a step-by-step tutorial. It's pretty easy to follow. You've got the diagram so you know where the wires have got to go, and then to actually take the PS4 apart, I just followed the iFixit written guide. Now the reason it took me so long to do this is because A, I've never taken a PS4 apart before, and B, I've never done one of these sort of modifications, so I was kind of learning as I went along. Hence why you see me using the multimeter. I'm checking all my connections, I'm making sure they go into the right point and then getting everything soldered in. Now I guess the only other thing I need to show you is where I actually put the LuckFox Pico itself. Where you see it here on the screen is where I actually positioned it. It doesn't look like it's going to fit, but trust me, it does. It kind of sits there on an angle, and then when you put the top plate on, because it kind of slides down, it fits perfect. Now unfortunately, I don't have a PS4 Pro or an original PS4 to test fitment on that, but if I can squeeze it into the PS4 Slim, I'm sure you'll be able to find somewhere to put it in the Pro or the original PS4. So is it the most elegant install? It's far from it. It kind of is a little bit on the janky side. Unfortunately, having to take those pins out from the Ethernet port, solder to those before you can then solder to the board, it's not ideal. I hate it. It's not the way I wanted to install it, but unfortunately it was the only way at the moment. Now of course, connecting the power from the USB port was nice and easy. That went exactly as I thought it would. One of the other issues I had, there's just not that much space in the PS4 Slim. So you might have better luck with the PS4 Pro and of course the original PS4 Fat. Now unfortunately, I don't have any diagrams for the original PS4 because how the Ethernet port is on the motherboard, it kind of comes off and then they've got a row of pads. I'll put a picture up here. So you would actually have to find out which pad goes to which twisted pair. Now I used a multimeter to find out which ones I needed to solder to in regards to the PS4 Slim, and thankfully the PS4 Pro is identical the way the Ethernet port is on the PS4 motherboard itself. So this solution here you can pretty much follow on the PS4 Slim or the PS4 Pro. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do a little bit of work yourself to find out which orange, green, and then of course the orange stripe cable and the green stripe cable, because yes, you only need 2 of the twisted pairs because we don't need a full-on gigabit Ethernet here. Just having the 2 means that this is just a 6-wire install, a lot better than having to wire all 8. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative and gives you a really good idea of how you get the LuckFox Pico inside the PS4 to jailbreak it. Now of course, if you don't want to do any soldering, you can always grab a case from the Etsy shop, link is in the description. Now of course, if you do have a 3D printer, I've put the link in the description for Thingiverse where you can download the STL files to print your own, whether it be on a resin printer or an FDM printer. So one more thing before you go, I just want to thank everyone that's bought the case from the Etsy shop or downloaded the files from Thingiverse. We've had quite a few sales and over 100 people have already downloaded the case from Thingiverse. So thank you guys so much, it really does help and support the channel. So I'm going to end the video here. If you enjoy my content, you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss any future uploads. I'm JP, you've been watching Alien Gaming, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.